How to score high in ethics paper? First thing is to understand the syllabus and then what is the focus of previous questions. We said syllabus is wide. It is called ethics, integrity, aptitude. Syllabus is wide. But going by the previous papers, it turns out that what was expected to be 1/3 of the syllabus is assuming the main thing of the examination. We can call that administrative ethics. Okay, so we can assume for all practical purposes the exam paper is on administrative ethics. Now, where do you get to know about this administrative ethics? Remember, the paper is not only on administrative ethics, but mostly the focus is here. So, I want the preparation to be somewhat total with a focus on this. So, I want you to learn about basic things like ethical thought. Okay, but come to administrative ethics as the focus. So, let us discuss what to do about administrative ethics. Number one, if you come into the books, this area should be taken as part of public administration. Administrative ethics or public sector ethics is studied under public administration. There is business ethics also, but ours comes mostly in public administration. Okay, so we have identified the locus and focus. So, what to read? I would say books on public administration and ethics interface are the books. And next, how to score high? How to score high? See, how to score high is a very tricky issue in this paper. I would say tricky because there is something unusualness about this. Most students are not familiar with this kind of challenge. Usually, what students are familiar is that they read so much. They read so much, and from this, questions can be asked. One question from this, one question from this, like this. So they want to read lot, and questions coming from that. They don't mind reading more, but questions should come from what they read. Unusual situation for a student is what they have to read is very, very little. Very little. But then the paper is for so many marks. That is, read only this much, but write this much. Usually there is so much to read, and out of that you write some little. But in this case, there is little to read and so much to write. Ethics paper is for 250 marks. So this is one kind of challenge where a student has little to read, but so important to the examination. So his usual method of reading so much to write a good answer fails. This is a challenge. One optional that has this challenge to the maximum extent is public administration. Public administration students read very, very little because there is nothing much to read in this. Maybe 4 or 5 books. But then they have to attempt 2 papers for 500 marks. So they face the challenge of how to write this examination, how to fill the paper, how to make your answer different from others, how to add value. All this without having much to study. So the usual method of working hard, studying so much, reading more books, memorizing more points, and distinguishing yourself through such a method, reading more, fails. In fact, this is so unique to public administration, you can call it a public administration problem. But problem like that is there at other places in the examination, and most so in ethics, GS4. So, I want you to fully recognize the nature of the challenge. Very little to study, but marks wise it is so important. Modern India, can you say there is little to study? So much to study, and very little will come out of it. Any area of GS, so much to study, very little will come out of it. But this is an area where there is so little to study, but so many marks. So I want the student to fully understand that this is a challenge with which he is not familiar, and so has to work out what it means and how this kind of challenge is met by others. How is this kind of challenge handled in certain disciplines? How do others handle this problem? And how do toppers distinguish themselves in a paper like this? and what is it that a student of GS4 can learn from them. Let me repeat, the problem of almost nothing to study, but having to write so much. Something like non-performance of a duty by a public servant is a form of corruption. Non-performance is a corruption. So you have to write so much. So one may think that okay, I have not studied now, and maybe if I study more books, I may know more. No. If you study, there will be little more data. But the problem of very little to study but carrying so much of weightage in the examination is a problem that a student cannot avoid. So let us see how this problem is met. The way I explore how to write or what makes a good answer. I took class on what makes a good answer in anthropology, in sociology. So what are the methods that I follow? My method is that take a good textbook, particularly globally popular book, global textbook. How are these topics covered in a reputed textbook? How does anthropology textbook cover a particular topic? How does a sociology textbook cover a particular topic? And then, coming to our examination, I see what are UPSC toppers doing. To what extent they are following this? To what extent they are not following it? To me, this gives a possibility and a template. And I see to what extent UPSC toppers are following or not following it. They are doing something to suit the needs of their examination. So this is my method of finding out what makes a good answer from UPSC point of view, if there is a variation between the two. So now, which textbooks we have to refer here? Textbooks on administrative ethics. Okay. So I refer to how they are being written. I also followed toppers. Okay. And I will give you what toppers I followed. In ethics, I followed all 2018 toppers. 2018 civil service examination toppers. One girl got Nidhi Sewaj, 83rd rank. And her score in ethics paper is 122. It's a very good score, 120. And because I consider this and something similar to public administration or a sub-discipline of public administration, I followed public administration toppers. AR 14, AR 18, 19. 14, Ankita Chaudhary. 18, Rishita Gupta. 19, Harpreet Singh. Harpreet Singh. So Harpreet Singh got 162 plus 169, 331. Very good score. Very good score. So I would say these people knew how to handle the problem we are discussing. So how did they handle? And next, how they handled is one, and what the textbooks say is another. And let me give you one very, very important tip here is that there is something common between the way textbooks are handling and what these people have done. And what is that? Let me fill the board so that you will know the importance. This is it. Examples. There is no textbook on administrative ethics without examples. You can call them case studies, role models, problems, best practices, best organizations, or scams. Subject is always conveyed through examples. There is no other way because theory is very, very little. In fact, Nidhi gives one formula. Nidhi Sivach gives one formula. She says 15% theory and 85% examples. It's a very, very good approach. And public administration toppers say, read little. There is nothing much to read in public administration, but apply. Apply more. What is applying more? Take up previous questions. Prepare answers. How do you prepare answers? From examples. Contemporary relevance, contemporary issues. Newspapers, magazines, case studies, government schemes. So they say read little from the previous questions, add or identify certain important dimensions, and on each question or each dimension work out. This is the way. And what does it mean to publish ethics paper? Number 1, previous questions. Go through the previous questions. You will see in the previous, going by the previous questions, number 1, there is a trend. By trend I mean in what way it is changing. I said it is changing towards public sector ethics. There is a trend. And number 2, there is a repetition. From the trend you guess what next. From the repetition you identify the dimensions. Some are more or less repeated. For example, your superior says something which is bad. What will you do? Many questions are of that type. Somebody says, even if you are honest, world is not going to change. What will you say? Case is genuine, but one particular rule is not being followed. What will you do? Okay. A relative who helped you or a friend who helped you is asking for a favor. What will you do? Your organization is doing many bad things and you approached your superiors but of no help. What will you do? These are repetitive dimensions. My book classified previous questions along these dimensions. So on this dimension, identify what is the theory. It may be very, very little. Identify. And sometimes it can even be big theory. For example, superior is saying something, will you defy? That is about disobedience. You have studies by Milgram, Zimbardo. Defiance, disobedience. Sometimes making people sensitive. Socrates. Or emotional intelligence. Okay, so you have theories, it can be big or small, this one, and that is not enough. Then you work out examples, case studies, best practices. Niti Aayog has one compilation of best practices in various fields, and also make examples as diverse, examples of people, examples of organizations. Organizations can be school, college, university, police station, army, a company you worked, BSF, or ISRO. And people can be sports people, scientists, philosophers, politicians, social workers. And problems faced, also diverse. Okay, and administrators, of course. So, identify the dimensions, whatever the little theory that is possible, get that, and along that dimension, prepare answers. Add quotations too. This is the only way. There is no other way. Okay, so previous questions, dimensions, examples. And you know, in all the civil services papers, diagrams play a very important role. So give importance to this, diagrams also. Diagrams seem to be a new mode of communication these days. PowerPoint presentation is full of diagrams. Niti Aayog report has many diagrams. Okay, so in a formula of PDF, previous questions, diagrams and facts, here under F, this is more of examples and case studies rather than numbers. This percentage, not like that. This is about examples. So this is the way to study. This is the way best textbooks are written, and this is the way students, good students, are writing. The paper has two parts, A and B. A deals with short answer questions and B deals with case studies. So case studies for 20 marks each. 20 into 6, 120 and 130 marks. And because it is only 6 questions, but each carrying 20 marks, most students are preferring to do case studies first. And after that they are going to section A. Of course, even within case studies, you can choose one, you can choose your own order. You don't have to go by the order in the question paper. And then same thing about this. You can choose and do it. And another thing is, what are these case studies? Sometimes case studies are going to societal level, personal, organizational, societal. Development versus displacement, prohibition, child labor. Okay. So there are certain common issues, and those common issues are being asked as case studies in section B. So my suggestion is that from the previous papers you get to know what are the important issues. In fact, the issues they are raising are the issues that come under GS 123 preparation. But the difference between case studies and GS 123 preparation is that you explain these cases in terms of what values are being violated and who are involved, the stakeholders, who are supposed to do what, and if done this way, what will be the impact, if done differently, what will be the impact, and how can it be done differently. This is the issue of best practices. For a question on prohibition, identify where the prohibition is handled well. For the question on child labor, identify where problem of child labor is solved. Same thing about hospital management. Same thing about law and order. So the study of best practices will throw light on how. And you need not go by Niti Aayog report only. You can see the best practices searching internet across the countries. So identify the dimension, see the best practice and memorize that and state it in terms of what values are in conflict, what is the ethical dilemma, what kind of possibilities exist, and out of each possibility, what are the consequences and what it is going to be. Case study involves explaining the nature of the problem, possible actions, possible consequences. Case study is not simply about writing the final solution. No. You have to write the thinking process. So you can take 20 marks question, write around 400 words in detail and with diagrams. So take it like an essay question and write. If thinkers can be used, use thinkers. Quotations, diagrams, best practices, and let everything be logical and with a flow. Okay, so this is the challenge that you have to face. Very little to study, but a lot to apply. And next thing, a lot to apply does not mean you apply your mind in the examination hall. No. The nature of civils examination is that you shouldn't need think much in the examination hall, because your competitors are working so hard at home. They are making well prepared answers with minor modifications to the actual question. Your your superior says something which is not legal, what do you do? Good preparation means all the points, diagrams, facts, case studies, examples, everything. That's how you should prepare. So read little, apply, and write down notes, memorize, multiple revisions. So don't think, because this paper requires thinking, I will think in the examination hall. No, that is not civils exam. Civils exam is about thinking at home, working hard at home, and unleashing your prepared answers, paying attention to the question requirements. But most of the preparation is done at home. After all, the questions have a pattern. It is that pattern you have to identify and respond. Thank you.